Today we're going to take a look at lesson 118. 118 has a couple things we're going to talk about. One is going to be using zeros as placeholders when we're doing division. And also we're going to talk about dividing decimal numbers by 10, by 100, and by 1000. So let's start talking about using zero as a placeholder, especially when we're talking about dividing with decimal numbers. So we're going to do that by taking a look at some examples. So here I have 0.6 divided by 5. Now, I know that whenever I divide, that decimal point's going to go straight up. We've talked about that. So let's do our division and see what happens. So I would say 5 goes into 0. How many times? It doesn't. 5 goes into 6. How many times? It goes in 1 time. 1 times 5 is 5. I'll subtract, and I have a 1. Okay? I don't have anything to bring down. But when I'm dividing with decimal numbers, I do not use remainders. So I'm not going to write a remainder. I'm not going to write a fraction at the end of it because I don't want to mix a decimal number and a fraction either. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to remember that I can add zeros after the decimal point and it doesn't change the value of my number. So if I add a 0 after this 6, it does not change the value of what this was. 0.6 is the same thing as 0.60. When I add that 0, however, it does give me something to bring down. So I can now bring down that 0, and I have a 10. So 5 goes into 10 how many times? It goes in 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. Now when I subtract, I don't have to worry about adding any other zeros because I'm already at 0, which is where I want to be. So now I'll go back up and address my decimal point. My decimal point goes straight up, and my answer is 0.12. Okay, if I look at the next one, I have 0.3 divided by 4. Okay, if you want to, you can start by putting your decimal point up there as well. You don't have to wait until the very end to put the decimal point. So 4 goes into 0 how many times? It doesn't. 4 goes into 3 how many times? It doesn't. So I can add a 0 here. 4 goes into 30 how many times? Well, 4 goes into 30 7 times. Whew. 7 times 4 is 28. I'll do my subtraction. 30 minus 28 is 2. Okay. I don't have anything to bring down, but I can't have a remainder. So that means I'm going to have to put a 0 here so I can bring it down. Then I have 4 goes into 20. How many times? It goes in 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. Now I'm at a 0, which is where I wanted to be. Now I want to go back and check this here, okay? Because this 7 is right above the 0. This 5 is right above the 0, but I have to have something above this 3. Okay, there's my 0 as a placeholder, 0.075. All right, let's talk about the second part of the lesson then, which is dividing by 10, 100, and 1000. And I've got a really cool trick I can show you for doing this division. Okay, you remember that when I had a number like 3.4 times 10, I could simply move that decimal point 1 place to the right, and I could get my answer of 34. That was with multiplying. With dividing, it's exactly the opposite. I can move my decimal point to the left as many times as there are zeros that I'm dividing by. So if I have 3.4 divided by 10, my 10 has 1 0, so I'm going to move my decimal point 1 place to the left, and I'm going to get 0.34. On this next one, 3.5 divided by 100. Now I have 2 zeros, so I'm going to move my decimal point 2 places to the left. 1, 2, and my decimal point will go right there. Now again, I have this gap here where I have to put in a placeholder of 0. So my answer to this is 0.035. Let's look at the next one. 12 divided by 10. Okay, so I have 1 0 in the 10 here. So I'm going to move my decimal point one place to the left. So I'll go to my decimal point. Uh-oh, I don't have a decimal point. But I know that 12 is a whole number, and it's understood that there's a decimal point behind it. So now I do have a decimal point, and I can move it one place to the left. So that will move it between the 1 and 2, and I will get 1.2 as my answer. Last one, I have 32.4 divided by 1,000. All right, I have 3 zeros, so I'm going to move my decimal point 3 places to the left. 1, 2, 3. I have a gap here. Have to add that 0 in. So my answer is 0.0324. And that is dividing by tens, hundreds, and thousands, and using zeros as placeholders in division. Have fun!